Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I'm happy to see you. I am a singer-songwriter, Annie DeShant, and I'm with you tonight to share with you a song that was inspired by David. I read a book called The American Way of Poverty a couple years ago, and in those pages I found David Grossman and read about his work. And I was so impressed with him that I looked him up online. And there I found more about his work and his passing. And there I found Stacy Grossman. And I had written the song that I'm going to share with you tonight with my friend Fry Gilliard, who is here with me. And I sent it to Stacy. I emailed it to her and asked her to listen to it and asked her if I could help raise money for DAG. And miraculously, 2 days later, I received an email back from Stacy telling me she loved the song and would I come to this event to be with you and to share it with you. So thank you to Stacy for asking me to be here tonight. Thank you to David. This song was inspired by David's work and by the people that he was so committed to. This is called Where We Are. Alice, my husband's Jay. We lost our house in a crash of a wave. When I got sick, bills piled up. Now the money we get don't last as long as the month. After all the years of saving and breathing in that dust, the mind shut down. Now they say there's nothing left for us. Does the red, white, and blue wave for everybody? Do the fruits of our labor trickle down? Can we all hitch our wagon to those stars? The answer is plain when you look at where we are. My name is Oliver. I'm still in school. My dad works 2 jobs. My mom skips some meals. Me and my brothers sleep on the floor. I was planning for college. I'm not planning anymore. Sometimes I cry 'cause I can't help it now. And it feels like my country forgot about us. Does the red, white, and blue wave for everybody? Do the fruits of our labor trickle down? And can we all hitch our wagon to those stars? The answer is plain when you look at where we are. But deep in my heart I believe in the America that I dream. I'm not talking about having everything like reality TV. I just want all of us to get what we need. trickle down when we all can hitch our wagon to those stars. The truth will be plain when you look at where we are. We've all come to look for America. We've all come to look for America. Thank you. Thank you, Stacey.
What an incredibly soulful, poignant song to start our evening. Thank you so much, Anne. And how about another round of applause for Annie Deschamps? Anne came here all the way from Ohio to debut her composition, Where We Are, and she has generously offered to donate the proceeds of her song to the DAG Fund, which is amazing, Anne. Thank you. There are flyers on your table that explain how you can download Anne's music. Good evening, everyone. My name is Stacy Grossman, and on behalf of the David Abraham Grossman Fund for Social Justice, I'd like to welcome you all here tonight to the DAG Fund's first ever fundraising event. We have over 250 people in attendance, which is remarkable. Thank you. It is an incredibly humbling feeling to have you all here tonight as we remember and honor my late husband, David Grossman, and strive toward building an endowment to extend his professional legacy. We have a terrific lineup of speakers who will share with you their unique lens on why the DAG Fund and its goals are so vitally necessary. In a short while, you'll hear from Sam Levine, a former student of David's and founding member of the DAG Fund, who will offer a glimpse of his experience learning from and working with David and explain the DAG Fund's important mission. Then our first DAG Fund fellow, Joey Michalakis, and City Life Vida Urbana organizer, Andre Del Castillo, will discuss their unique advocate-activist relationship, and that partnership is funded by the DAG Fund, so that's really exciting. Dean Minow, a champion of the DAG Fund, is here tonight to lend her voice and introduce her friend and former colleague, Senator Elizabeth Warren. And I know that we are all very excited to listen to our trailblazing senior United States Senator from Massachusetts. Finally, David's longtime friend and the chair of our event, Phil Kaufman, will offer some thoughtful and compelling closing remarks. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and so instead of relying on a few short sentences, which could never adequately convey to you what David's professional legacy is and means, I put together a video that layers images of David at work with an interview that he gave to Boston Neighborhood Network back in 2010. For those of you who knew David well, I hope this video will reinforce your memories of your friend and colleague. And for those of you who never heard of David Grossman or knew little about him, I hope that this video will successfully portray David's compassion and over 2-decade-long commitment to advocating on behalf of communities in crisis. And for all of you, I hope this video ignites and sustains your interest in supporting our efforts and extending David's narrative. Thank you.
My name is John White. I'm here with King Saul Presents from BNN Neighborhood Network Station. We want to ask you a couple of questions as to who you work for. And first of all, what is your name?
I'm Dave Grossman. I'm affiliated with the Harvard Legal Aid Bureau, which is a poverty law clinic at Harvard Law School.
Now, you're also affiliated with City Life?
Yeah, we work in partnership with City Life in sort of a joint legal organizing strategy to deal with the effects of the foreclosure crisis in the neighborhoods in Boston.
And you're here in court this morning to do what exactly?
Yeah, we're out in front of the Boston Housing Court, which is the court in Boston where all evictions take place, residential evictions. And this is what happens after foreclosure, is when banks foreclose on property, they subsequently try to evict both the former owners and the tenants. And that displacement is what is destroying our neighborhoods. This is the court where those eviction cases take place. And what we're here to do today is to try to stop, as we are every week, to try to stop every one of those evictions. So we know, because we have the list of cases that are on today, that there are 26 cases being heard today in Boston Housing Court that involve banks evicting folks after foreclosure. And our goal today is to intervene in every single one of those cases to stop those evictions and stop the displacement.
What made you get into this line of work, being an attorney and having the capability to go in another direction? Why did you choose this path?
Because I believe that we have to do the right thing, that part of our job as people, and specifically as attorneys, is to help fix a broken world. And the piece that's most broken now, I mean, there's plenty of broken pieces, but the one broken piece in which I have some expertise in is housing, and the big problem now is the foreclosures. And so we decided to devote all our resources, both the legal resources and City Life's organizing resources, to dealing with the effects of the foreclosure crisis in Boston. It's extremely rewarding work. That's probably the main reason that I do it. It's not financially rewarding, but it's rewarding in spiritual and moral and other ways. And I guess that's probably why I've gone this direction in my career.
Well, what do you hope to accomplish this morning when you're in court?
So every one of the 26 cases I mentioned, our goal is to keep the folks there from being displaced. In some cases, we'll have to go in front of the judge and argue using various legal theories and tactics we have that the bank is not entitled to throw people out. In other cases, we'll negotiate with attorneys to get more time for people. Other cases, we might have to actually have a trial in which we'll put on witnesses or we'll argue motions. But there's various legal maneuvers that we can make, and in every case our goal is the same, to ensure that folks are not thrown out. In some cases, we're just creating room for a more stable solution. A lot of the former owners now, as a result of our joint strategy, and also involving a third partner other than Harvard Legal Aid and City Life, which is a local community bank called Boston Community Capital, which is financing owners to buy their own properties back after foreclosure. Our legal strategy here is simply to create enough room for that financing and that negotiating to happen. So it's somewhat different in each of the different cases, but the ultimate goal is the same: prevent displacement.
Well, we thank you for taking the time, and we wish you the very best. And I know we'll be seeing a lot of each other, so just keep up the good work, and know that you are blessed, and we thank you for all your effort.
I look forward to it, and thank you so much for your assistance in this, because getting the word out to people out there is what's really important. We've had a lot of successes locally, but the goal is to scale this up so the entire region is part of this same resistance movement where no one gets displaced, and part of it is nationally also. And this helps us get the word out beyond the neighborhoods that we're in and beyond Boston, and you guys have done taken a tremendous role in helping us, so appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Have a blessed day.
My name is Sam Levine, and as one of Dave's former students, and I'd like to think his biggest fans, it is truly my honor to talk to you tonight about some of the lessons I learned from Dave and the reason I am so committed to carrying on his legacy through the DAG Fund. As first-year law students, we tend to learn the law through textbooks and cases and intellectual jousting with our peers. And as we embark on our second and third years and decide on our career path, It's easy to forget the impact that the law has on ordinary people's lives, especially people without the privileges that we had. Well, as a teacher and mentor, Dave never let his students forget. Dave, in the depths of the foreclosure crisis, bussed his students into inner city Boston. There, we saw the power of the law on the streets of Dorchester and Roxbury, on the row after row of vacant homes, in the boarded-up windows, and the unmowed grass. And when Dave took us to a foreclosure resistance meeting at City Life, we saw the power of the law on the anxious faces of people whose homes were being taken away from them by faraway banks, banks that they had just bailed out, but that now couldn't be bothered to answer the phone when it was ordinary people who needed a hand. But Dave taught me to see in those faces not hopelessness and despair, but power and agency. At the end of each City Life meeting, people at the meeting had the opportunity to meet with a law student or a lawyer to discuss their case. Now, when I first played that role, I sort of approached it like I would approach a problem in law school. I took a look at the file, I spotted the issues, I tried to devise the best course of action I could. But Dave was completely different. Dave got to know every person he met. He learned their names, he learned their stories, he learned where they live, he met their families, and they often met his family. And Dave understood that these folks could claim power for themselves outside the courtroom and claim power for their communities. And that's exactly what they did. These folks at City Life, who, when we stood beside them in court, were silent, who were names on a long list of defendants being evicted by Fannie Mae and Bank of America, they claimed power for themselves and their communities. They held huge rallies. They staged protests, sometimes in their own front yards. They demanded action from their elected officials. And Dave stood with them every step of the way. And I think it's important to say that Dave stood with them not as a lawyer, not as a Harvard professor. Dave stood with them as a fellow citizen, joined in their struggle for economic justice. Standing by Dave's side, I learned lessons I'll never forget. He taught me to appreciate the power of the law, but also the power of ordinary people. He taught me to be fiercely ambitious in my demands for social change, but to always keep my work grounded in individual relationships. Dave taught me to be driven in everything I do by love, but to never fear a fight. Simply put, David Grossman was the greatest mentor and the greatest mensch that I have ever known. He was a true blessing in my life, and I think a blessing in many of our lives. Of course, as we all know, Dave was more than a mentor and a mensch. He was an extraordinary change agent whose work helped save thousands of homes and inspire a national movement. And that movement had so much power and so much success because of the collaboration Dave forged between lawyers and law students and organizers and ordinary people. Well, tonight, we have the opportunity to plant the seeds for new collaborations. We have the opportunity to launch the next generation of leaders who think like lawyers, who act like activists, and who are as committed to social justice as Dave. That is the mission of the DAG Fund. That is the impact that we can have tonight. And that is why I want to thank you so much for your support today and encourage you this evening to be as generous as you can. Together, let us see to it that Dave's spirit endures and that his tireless work to heal our broken world is carried forward by each one of us. Thank you. Thank you. I now am doubly honored because I have the opportunity to introduce two individuals whose incredible collaboration truly embodies the spirit of the DAG Fund. And that's appropriate because one of them, Joey Michalakis, is our first DAG Fellow. And Joey and his next speaker have very impressive bios that I have condensed. Joey is spending his fellowship year in the Housing and Employment Units in Greater Boston Legal Services, where he works in partnership with community organizations to develop strategies for combating displacement in low-income communities. Joey is a proud alum of Teach for America and the Harvard Legal Aid Bureau, where he helped forge a partnership between HLAB and City Life's emergent East Boston site. Today, Joey is furthering that partnership through his work with our second speaker, Andres Del Castillo. Andres has been a community organizer for the past 6 years, dedicating himself to the work of building local power to challenge the socio-political injustices that affect marginalized people, particularly queer students and immigrants. With a commitment to supporting neighborhood residents in their daily struggles and working with them to support their push for structural and institutional changes. Andres has been an organizer for Centro Presente and now serves as lead organizer for City Life Vida Urbana's North Side site, serving primarily the communities of East Boston and Chelsea. Andres looks forward to continuing to dedicate himself to the community where he was born and where he grew up. So please give a warm round of applause for our first DAG Fellow, Joey Michalakis, and for Andres Del Castillo.
Good evening. So as was said, I'm an activist. I tend to speak from the heart and not from prepared remarks, so please excuse me. So good evening. My name is Andres Del Castillo. You've heard a little bit about me. I grew up in the area that I now have the privilege to serve as an organizer. My family has suffered the same things, from aggressive rent increases to suffering in the foreclosure crisis and fighting against our own foreclosure in 2009. And we were one of the few very privileged families to be able to win our situation during the foreclosure crisis. And in terms of speaking to the immensity and the magnitude of the work that we do, there are so many cases that we can cite and we can talk about. There's a multitude of examples that can really tell us why it is that the work that we do is so amazing. There are the classic eviction cases, the building clear out cases of 12 units or 6 units, 10 units, 8 units, landlords with hundreds of properties. I can name City Realty, who we protested, had depositions, city hall hearings, multiple media coverage over it. We've helped so many families in these situations. And there are those classic David and Goliath examples, if I would name them that. But in particular, one that I wanted to bring tonight was a story on Lexington Street. It's actually how Joey and I got close when he was a student at HLAB. Is a mom, single mom. She lived on Lexington Street and had a landlord whose particular motivation was just to see them out on the street. Not a big building clear out, not a movement case by most standards. Just a simple, really bad actor, not really caring what was about to happen to a single mom and 3 really young children. And I remember after so many negotiating and court dates moving back and forth, being in court at her last court hearing and the judge asking for one last shot at mediation, and I just looked over at Joey and I was like, I need you. I just need you right now. And he came downstairs. We went to the 3rd floor over at Boston Housing Court. I'm briefing him on the case. I'm pitching it to him. And he's so willing. I guess the point of it is to say he trusted in me, and he trusted in my judgment as a community organizer and as a community leader. And in that moment, allowed me to build a lot of trust with him. Needless to say, we found an awesome resolution for that family. She was able to stay comfortably in her home until she found a healthy transition for herself. But in that not so romanticized case was birthed an incredible leader in this struggle. She held recruitment calls for marches and protests. She went to court solidarity for other tenants, came to every meeting. Her daughters recruited at their local high schools for city hall hearings. They would come and volunteer. They came in droves of students to our protests and rallies. And that was what happened out of that moment. And so much of this work that we do, so much of the golden nuggets in it are found in that space, right? In those uncertain decisions or small moments of what do we do? And that's truly where that movement, where this partnership holds its strongest value. And I think that that's something, without knowing him, that David had to have understood to dedicate himself to this work. And for a man who some might know to sit in protests and chant, "We shall not be moved," it's clear to me that he, David Grossman, moved so many people that he knew and loved. And it's clear to me that his legacy still moves those of us who exist in it today. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Joey Mikalakis. I'm a fellow attorney at Greater Boston Legal Services, and until very recently, I was a student attorney at the Harvard Legal Aid Bureau. I'm glad that Andres ended by talking about Dave's legacy, because it's something, even though I never met him, that I think about all the time, not least because I had the privilege of being trained by people who were moved immensely by him and trained by him and are the greatest lawyers I think I'll ever know. But another huge component of his legacy is this partnership. There he is. This partnership and the partnership between HLab, Greater Boston Legal Services, City Life Vida Urbana, and what's come out of it. The phrase that always gets used, not just to rev up everybody at the end of meetings, when we fight, we win. It's not just for that. It's also true. And what that means to me is when we're able to work together, to connect people who are threatened by displacement with a community that gives them the strength to fight for their homes and for their neighborhood, and with the legal resources that they need to face and resist a judicial process whose summary process, is designed to facilitate people moving out as quickly as possible. And when you also connect them with ongoing training to see how their individual cases fit into a broader fight against displacement and for economic and racial justice, we don't lose. We might settle, but we never lose. And I think one of the profoundest lessons that I've personally learned, thanks to this partnership and my work at HLab and the work that I'm continuing to do at GBLS, is interrogating and thinking critically about and eventually reshaping my own sense of what it means to win. And winning, it's important for legal services lawyers because, we only have so many resources. And you only want to get involved in cases where you add value, where you can win in some sense. And I think I've just gained a better perspective of what winning looks like. I mean, sometimes, as Andres just mentioned, what winning looks like is a 4-day jury trial that 4 Northside members in Orient Heights, in tandem with a wonderful legal team, Eloise Lawrence, Nan McGarry, Pedro Scabicasi-Gonzalez, Jack Solano, Stanford Fraser, some of whom are here tonight, won last January, which ensured that a 6-unit building in the heart of one of Boston's most rapidly gentrifying neighborhoods is going to stay affordable at least through next year. Sometimes winning looks like that. Yeah. And I mean, sometimes though, winning does look different. As Andres mentioned, sometimes the facts are messy. That landlord was a bad actor, but they were also owner-occupants. They were also probably trying to cash in on home equity. And people like that get caught up in the systemic injustices that we're fighting against all the time. And what I've learned, especially from Andres, Steve, Maria Cristina, the other fantastic City Life community members, some of whom are here tonight, is that it can be just as important, it is just as important to the community that we show up then too, even if it's to reach an outcome that looks different than winning a trial. And I mean, again, I think even though that case that Andres mentioned on Lexington Street, it wasn't the kind of case that I think typically legal services organizations would be jumping at. we helped her become a leader, someone who was indispensable at Northside for months to come. And I think what it means to me is that movement consciousness can emerge out of all kinds of situations, not just the classic David versus Goliath situation. And I think that speaks to the need to confront and be creative in situations where there's clear injustice that's enmeshed in messy facts, moral complexity. And being a good friend to your community partners means showing up then too, and figuring out what to do. And I'm so thankful for the chances that I've had to work with Andres, with everyone else at City Life, with HLab, with the work I'm doing now at GBLS. And I'm even more grateful to have the chance to continue to do that work through the David Grossman Fund. Thank you. And I wanted to wrap up by introducing our next speaker, Dean Martha Minow, who both Andres and I are grateful to for a number of reasons. Throughout her career, Dean Minow has distinguished herself not just as an exceptional scholar and teacher, but also as a tireless advocate for racial, social, and economic justice. As dean, she has steadfastly supported clinical education and student practice opportunities that help HLS students use their legal education right from day one to serve working class communities of color in Greater Boston. As a member of HLab, I've always known Dean Minow to be a tremendous source of institutional support, including and especially the work that we do in tandem with City Life. She's always made sure that we have the resources that we need to do good work, our student, staff, and clinical instructors alike. But she also uses her office and her platform to draw attention to the issues that we care about, including, obviously, gentrification and its impact upon neighborhood segregation and racial and social justice. And finally, Dean Minow, as Stacy mentioned, was instrumental in getting the law school to step up and fund the DAG Fund this year. So I'm, again, personally extremely grateful to her. Without further ado, Dean Minow.
Good evening. This is a fantastic sight. This makes this evening just so memorable. Another student of David Grossman once said, and I quote, "Seeing Dave in action is nothing short of an inspiration. He asks key questions that advance the conversation and draw out even reluctant participants. He provides accurate and thoughtful guidance, and he inculcates the desire to rise to and surmount the present challenge with a combination of hard work, cooperation, and hope." That was Sophie Bryan, but I think many, many, many of his students and friends and colleagues would say the same thing, maybe not as eloquently. I know I feel the same way. I miss Dave every day. I will always remember his commitments to social justice and his ability to motivate others and his fashion sense. Taken from us all far too soon, David inspires us constantly. The DAG Fund was founded in 2015 to enable graduating law students to offer the kind of partnerships, the kind of initiative, the kind of motivation that you've just been hearing about. I am so honored to be here with people who knew Dave and who care about his commitments, and people who didn't know him and who care and are inspired. Kramer Levin, Phil Kaufman, all the hosts and sponsors, City Life, students, colleagues, friends. There could be no better way, I think, to carry on Dave's legacy. I want to say to Lev and Shayna, thank you for your indomitability. And Stacy, look at this room. This is you, Stacy. Thank you. There could be nobody better to motivate and inspire all of us than the senior senator from Massachusetts. from her path-breaking research exposing how medical bills force people to declare bankruptcy, to her vigorous oversight of the Troubled Assets Relief Program, her invention of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and her work every single day since 2012 to be the voice for people who are being, can I say it, screwed? There is no one in this country who is a better, more articulate, more forceful, or more effective advocate and spokesperson for people who need it and deserve it. What a joy it is to welcome back the repeat winner of the Best Teacher Award at Harvard Law School, truth teller, master of Twitter, Elizabeth Warren.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It really is just delightful to be here, and I'm so pleased to see so many people. You know, I have to tell you, Stacy, that when I got this call, Martha and Alexa reached out and said, would you be willing to come and do this? And said, we're going to have a dinner. And my first thought was, okay, we're going to do a dinner. And they said, it's for Dave Grossman, and we're putting together a foundation so that we will be able to carry on his work. And I had exactly one answer immediately, and that is, I'm in. I'm in because I remember Dave too. And I'm in because his work must go on. So Dave and I cross paths at different times through legal services because I teach a lot about people who go broke. And a lot of bad things happen to them, and so we'd sometimes see intersections over in legal services. I try to help out from time to time. But he's the one who was running it, who was inspiring, who was keeping the students going. But I wanted to talk tonight. I was just trying to think about this and trying to think, because our big intersection came, no surprise, in 2008, 2009. That's when we really started connecting up on the work. And it's to talk for just a minute about what's happened in America, why it is that Dave Grossman had to do the work that he was called to do. And I want to see if I can tell a long story really quickly, so I won't do it Socratically. But here's the basic story. We built this country. We thought we had a great idea, but it was a boom and bust country. That's what it was from the 1790s all the way to 1930. And what would happen is roughly about every 15 years, we'd get it going, it would move up, people would have more jobs, there'd be more going on in the economy, and it would blow up, and the whole thing would crash. And yeah, the speculators would go down, and owners of good-sized businesses would go down, but so did the employees. And so did the farmers, and so did the little shopkeepers, so did everyone else. They lost their farms, they lost their homes, and then what would happen? They'd start the process all over again with a lot of hurt left behind. Then we hit the big one in 1930, so big it got its own name, the Great Depression. And here's the amazing thing. We said at the moment of the Great Depression, we can do better than this. As a country, we can build something better than this. We do not have to do this every 15 years. We do not have to be boom and bust. And so we did two fundamental things. The first one is we said we can actually regulate finance better. What's going on with finance? And you know what? We did it. So we made it safe to put money in banks, FDIC insurance. We separated ordinary banking, safe banking, from crazy risk-taking, that was Glass-Steagall. And we put a cop on the beat on Wall Street, that was the SEC. And the second thing we did three things. And actually, let me stop there. We did three things. Do you know what happened? We bought ourselves economic peace. There were some recessions, there's some movement, but no big crash, right? No big crash. We bought it. And then what did we do with the peace we bought? We invested in building opportunity for all of us. We invested heavily in education. GI Bill, NDEA loans, federal aid to education. We doubled down and doubled down again because we believed that if more of our kids could get a good education, then they would have more opportunities. They could build more. They could do more. We invested in infrastructure, in roads and bridges and power and clean water. Why? Because we didn't know who was going to build the next great business, but we were pretty darn sure they were going to need electricity. We were pretty darn sure they were going to need roads to be able to get their goods to market. And so we all invested in those things, so whoever had the great idea would have a chance to grow it and grow jobs for the rest of us. We all pitched in to help make that happen. And we did a third thing, because we were a truly remarkable people. We invested in research, in ideas. We invested in scientific research and medical research and engineering research and social science research over this long period. We invested because we believed that if we built a giant pipeline of ideas, that our kids would be able to do things we hadn't even dreamed of yet. Now, here's the thing. We put those regulations in place. We made those investments, and it worked. It absolutely worked. You look at the numbers, and from 1935 to 1980, GDP just keeps this upward climb. And what happens to all that new income that's generated? The 90% of America, everybody outside the top 10%, everybody outside the top 10%, got 70% of all the new income that was generated. We built opportunity in this country, and we lifted people. We weren't perfect. Boy, there were lots of people who got shut out who didn't have the same opportunities. African Americans, Latinos, women for a long time. LGBT, lots of folks got pushed out, but we were bending it in the right direction. I'll give you just one stat on that. 1960s and 1970s, the black-white wealth gap that has been there as long as we have been able to measure a wealth gap was actually cut by 70%. We were putting ourselves on the right track. We weren't there yet, but we were on the right track. And then 1980 is kind of a good mark point here. We turned this country in a different direction. Ronald Reagan gets elected. Business is now on the rise. And the whole notion changes from one of let's keep the regulations in place and let's invest in all of us to an America that, I'm just going to be blunt, is about how to help the rich and powerful get richer and more powerful. That's what happened. And I'll do it both ways, on the rich and the powerful. Rich was about cutting taxes, and once you cut taxes, there's no money left, and that's exactly what's happened. There's no money for education. We've made deep cuts in our support for education. That's why it is that we now have a $1.3 trillion student loan bill, because we've made those cuts and driven up the cost of college and forced those costs onto our kids. We have made cuts in infrastructure. The American Society for Civil Engineers now says that we get a D+ rating. Bridges fall down. Larry Summers actually does the calculation on this in terms of what you should be doing with maintenance. He now says basically in America, we are investing zero in infrastructure. The dollars we're spending do not even keep our infrastructure safe and up to date, and we are not building anything new. And the third part, research, the way you build that great pipeline of ideas, we've cut it by 40% as a proportion of our GDP since the 1960s. That's the direction that we have gone in. And the other part, need I speak about the regulatory part of this? What's happened on that front? We repealed Glass-Steagall. We pulled regulatory thread after regulatory thread out of the basic structure. We turned around and said, in effect, that the bank regulators are here to serve the industry, not to watch out for American consumers. And what was the consequence of all of this? It was the crash of 2008. A crash that we estimate today, no one is sure entirely, but that cost this country $14 trillion and cost upwards of 8 million people their homes. Their single most valuable asset, if you just want to do this on dollars, but the part that was the stability, the part where you raised your kids, the part where you knew you were safe, we just wiped it out, took it away. We made this country work for those at the top. And by the way, let me be clear, it still worked. Remember how I told you from 1935 to 1980, GDP had done this, and that the 90% got 70% of all new income growth in that time? From 1980 to 2016, GDP stays on basically the same upward trajectory. There's a little bump, obviously. In 2008, it comes down. It's a little uneven, but it goes up. So what happened to the 90% from 1980 to 2016? How much of the growth in income did they get in that time period? The answer is effectively zero. 0.6%. That's it. 100% of growth in income, not just in the last 2 years, not just since the crash, since 1980 has gone to those at the top. We have a country that works great if you're in the top 10%. It's not about the 1%. It's really the top 10%. It's working great for the top 10%. And opportunity for everyone else is shrinking, is being cut off. And that's what brings us to today and why we're here for the Dave Grossman Fund. We find our best ways to fight back. For me, when Dave really jumped on my radar screen is when I was teaching my commercial law class in the spring of '09. We've just had the crash in '08 in the fall. I've had my bankruptcy students. And I'm in the middle of trying to teach basically how mortgage works, because that's what you have to do in secured transactions, how you take property back, even though it's not actually the real estate course. And I have about 4 guys sitting in the back row in my class who did not look like they'd been paying close attention until they came down with a whole list of very specific questions that were not actually what we've been talking about. So in a foreclosure, a judicial foreclosure state, how exactly does that work? And I'm saying, wait, we don't talk about that in this class. And they're like, well, okay, but how does it work? And talk a little bit more. And then they said, have you heard of No One Leaves? And I said, no. And they said, well, here's what it is. And they told me about what Dave was working on, told me about what they had built together. And here was their ask. Could they stand up in class and see if anyone else wanted to join them? And I said, you bet, find out. And they stood up in class, described what they were trying to do. And remember at this moment, the foreclosures are just starting, right? The whole thing is just starting. It's like the ground is crumbling everywhere. And they explained that they want to start out by walking the neighborhoods, passing out flyers, saying you don't have to go. There is help. There are ways that you can stay, and we want to help you. We want to be part of that. And we want to help you find the ways to make this work. I said, is anyone in here want to join us? And that was my commercial law class for the spring of 2009. And that's what Dave does. Now, that's what I admired most about Dave, is that he saw a problem and he did his best to fix it. He used the tools that he had available to him. Heck, let's face it, he made up a few tools. Those are the best kind, right? Until you get them out there and you make it happen. But here's where we are today. We don't have Dave with us. And we still haven't fixed this problem. Yeah, foreclosures have slowed down because so many people have already lost their homes. Foreclosures are not happening nearly as much because BlackRock now owns their homes. And this is the part that makes me so furious, and why the minute the question came, would you come here and talk tonight, is to say, I just want you to understand today, after all that we have seen, after all that we have watched, as these financial institutions loaded up on risk, as the regulators looked the other way, as the federal government made itself the tool of those who had already made it big, all of that has happened, where are we today? Well, all those houses that had been owned by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and FHA houses that ultimately, through a very long and slow process, end up at HUD. Some of them still have families in them, some of them don't. Some of them have been in foreclosure literally 6 and 7 and 8 years, some a much shorter period of time. What's happening? HUD's now selling those houses. They're packaging them up and selling them back. They're saying, get them off the government's books. It's time to put them back into the hands of communities, owners, somebody else. Not our problem, says HUD. So how do they put the packages together? They put the packages together in a way that was perfectly designed for hedge funds to come in and buy them. And those have been the principal buyers of these packages of loans. And I just want to point out on this, the example. You put together a package of bad mortgages that are all right here in Boston or right in Worcester, someplace close that are contiguous, you can get a group that can invest in that. You can get local people who'll be able to put it together, who'll be able to run it, who'll be able to work with the homeowners who are here, who'll be able to work with the cities, find ways to take those homes, to make them affordable housing if they no longer have the homeowner in them, or to keep a homeowner in them. You can put restrictions on how you sell them. But how did HUD sell them? They put them into giant packages, and there are a few from Boston, and there's some from Springfield, and then there are a whole bunch from California, and then a bigger bunch from Nevada, and a few from down in Florida, and then a couple more from Texas. Who do you think bids on a package like that? And the answer is, it's BlackRock. It's Goldman. It's the hedge funds. It's the guys in New York who, they look at it and they just say, this is a business opportunity. We're going to buy this stuff up, and we're going to get rid of the families who are in them, and then we're going to turn around, and if we can sell them, that's fine, but mostly want to turn it into rental property and see how much we can squeeze out of this. I tell you this because this is something that would make Dave Grossman furious, and it would make him fight back. So I figured I'd get a chance to come here tonight with people who understand why we get furious and people who will say, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to make a difference. I come here tonight because I am an optimist. I come here tonight because I believe that optimists see what is wrong, figure out a path to fix it, and then just do their damnedest to get out there and make the changes we need to make. And I think that's the best way we honor Dave Grossman, and that's why I wanted to be here. So that's it. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Warren.
My pleasure.
I am so proud. This is my state senator. I voted for her. I hope all you did too.
We do this for both. You take care of it.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Warren, for your intelligence and your leadership. Thank you for your passionate and compelling address about the importance in investing in our communities and advocating on behalf of public interests. And thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here tonight to engender interest and enthusiasm for the David Abraham Grossman Fund for Social Justice. Thank you, Senator Warren. I would like to thank Dean Minow for her staunch and enthusiastic support of the DAG Fund, for providing the capital for our first DAG Fellowship, and for creating supportive space for the DAG Fund in our fundraising efforts here at Harvard Law School. Thank you to the Thank you to the chair of our event, Phil Kaufman, and to the members of Kramer Levin, Naftalis, and Frankel for being our presenting sponsor. Kramer Levin's exceedingly generous donation to the DAG Fund propels us closer to our ultimate goal of raising $1 million to establish a permanent endowment. Thank you. Thank you to Larry Curtis and Wind Development for their bronze sponsorship of the fund. Wind Development has been a leader in creating affordable housing, and Larry was a frequent guest speaker in David's classes, so this support is especially meaningful. Thank you. Thank you to Lance and Janie Hoffman, founders and creators of Mama Chia. Your in-kind donation of Mama Chia beverages made our reception extra special and extra delicious, and your sponsorship of the DAG Fund emphatically illuminates your devotion to honoring your beloved friend's legacy. Thank you. Thank you to Jeff Middleman and Holland and Knight for your sponsorship of the DAG Fund. Jeff, along with his colleagues, were frequent volunteers of David's Lawyer of the Day program at Boston Housing Court, and I am grateful that Holland and Knight continues to be invested in David's work. Thank you. Thanks to Tanya Helhosky of Bird Design for creating our logo, our invitations, and our event booklet, and to Anne E. Deschamps for sharing her music with us here tonight. I'd also like to thank speakers Sam Levine, Joey Michalakis, and Andres del Castillo for their wonderful and compelling words, and I am so proud that the DAG Fund is supporting Andres and Joey. I would also like to thank my hard-working hosts committee for their efforts to engender attendance and support for tonight's event. I'd like to thank all of our benefactors. I'd like to thank HLS's Development and Events Planning team, the Tour de Force DAG Fund committee members, especially Alexa Shebakov, who secured our keynote speaker. And many, many thanks to all of you who are here tonight to support our efforts. Your attendance is so greatly appreciated. Thank you. It is my great honor to introduce to you the chair of our event, Phil Kaufman. But before I do, I'd like to share a little vignette, a little backstory of how Phil came into David's and my life. Back in 1989, I landed a job as a paralegal at Kramer Levin. I was 23. And through magical luck and fate, I met and eventually married the love of my life, a young associate named David Grossman. In September of 1990, just a few months into our relationship, David invited me to his apartment to watch a Sunday afternoon football game. The Giants were playing against the Dallas Cowboys. We sat on his sofa during pregame, and David filled me in on his team, the Giants. Bill Parcells was the coach. Phil Simms was the quarterback. Lawrence Taylor, the linebacker. He spewed facts about the team, described strategy that needed to be employed by the defense and offense, and his words washed over me. I had no idea what he was talking about. But I didn't care. I was in love and going to watch a football game with my boyfriend. As the players positioned themselves on the field for kickoff, David, too, much to my confusion, positioned himself for the game. He stood up, got a chair, placed it directly in front of the TV, and sat down with his back facing me as I remained on the sofa. To his credit, he shifted a little to the right so I could see the TV screen. During the game, he shouted at the TV as if the players and the coach could hear him. And during commercial breaks, he would turn to me and exchange charming banter like, "Isn't this fun? Can you get me a Coke from the fridge?" After the Giants beat the Cowboys, I headed home and thought, what kind of crazy football fanatic am I dating? And does he expect me to regularly watch and follow the Giants too? Anxiety set in. But it didn't last long because I soon learned that there was a young partner at Kramer Levin named Phil Kaufman, who, like David, was an emphatic fan and learned scholar of the Giants. Phil and David became fast friends and remained so until David's last breath. For 25 years, David and Phil spoke regularly for almost every Giants game and every NFL draft while I went shopping. It was the perfect threesome, a symbiotic relationship that gave us all great joy. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great privilege to introduce to you senior partner at Kramer Levin, Naftalis and Frankel, the chair of the first David Abraham Grossman Fund for Social Justice Fundraiser, and David's and my dear friend, Phil Kaufman.
Thank you, Stacy. This is not like being in court. Very emotional for me because I love David and miss him. We arrived at Kramer Levin 5 days apart, and we became friends almost immediately. But after just a couple of short years at our firm, during which time, by the way, David had already proven himself to be a star, he did what few of us have the courage to do. He gave up what was sure to become a very lucrative career representing large companies and high net worth individuals to devote himself to what mattered to him: protecting the rights of the underprivileged and the disadvantaged. And he devoted his entire career to this cause, using the law to help those in need. His work, as you've heard, targeted many of the most pernicious forms of injustice our society must confront, one of which is displacement of individuals and even entire families from their homes. But there were other areas as well: racial discrimination and inequality, wage inadequacy, domestic violence, infringement on LGBT rights, and others. And over the course of his career, David helped countless individuals achieve justice that would otherwise have been denied to them. Equally important, he inspired literally hundreds of HLS students to follow his example, either as a full-time career endeavor or as an integral part of their work in the private sector. So after David passed away, and Stacy told me she was intent on creating a fund in David's name to carry on his work, she didn't need to ask for my help. I was grateful to do whatever I could to help make the fund become a reality and to help ensure its success. Stacy told me that the fund's mission would be to provide resources that would enable underprivileged individuals and communities to combat social and economic injustice in its myriad forms. And of course, I knew that for the fund to pursue that mission, it needed not just talented and highly motivated people, it needed money. And the first place I looked for that was my firm, which I'm very proud to say was all in from the start. And this was really no surprise since the firm has been devoted to pro bono efforts of the type David championed, and this fund will be pursuing since its inception. It's part of the firm's culture. We've always believed that it's the core responsibility of every lawyer to use our skills and devote a meaningful portion of our time to helping the underprivileged. And this was, in fact, one of the main reasons why David joined Kramer Levin in the first place. But I know that there are lots of other firms, including those represented here tonight, that are likewise committed to this cause and recognize the importance of helping the fund become as successful as David himself would want it to be, as successful as it must be. And the same is true of all those here tonight outside the legal sector. All of you have shown support for this fund, and for that, I cannot thank you enough. To make the fund most successful, though, it's important not only that we ourselves support it, but also that we enlist the support of other organizations and individuals we know. I'm committed to doing that, and I would encourage everyone here to do the same. Now, as Stacy suggested, my friendship with David was not based on some shared passion for the lofty goal that this fund is undertaking. Not even close. It was actually based on a very different shared passion for the New York Football Giants. Now, at the time we met, as Stacy alluded, the Giants were anything but underprivileged. They had LT and had recently won a Super Bowl. But what Dave and I discovered we both loved was the Giants we had grown up with, the Giants of the 1960s and 1970s, who were regularly terrible, among the worst football teams ever to play in the NFL. And Dave and I would reminisce about those teams, challenging one another to recall who played for them, what uniform numbers they wore, and notable plays they had managed to make during the course of given games, albeit in usually losing efforts. But as much detail as I remembered, and I remembered a lot, I was no match for David in that challenge. He had an almost supernatural memory and could recite off the top of his head not only just about every play that every Giants player ever made, but also the stats of virtually every Giants player, both per season and over their careers. It was incredible. I once asked him how he could possibly remember not just the long touchdowns that his favorite player of all time, Homer Jones, had scored, but even the short gains that obscure backs like Tucker Fredrickson and Ernie Coy had made over the course of their relatively undistinguished careers. And Dave's answer was that those short gains were important to a team like the Giants because they provided reason for optimism even while things looked bleak. Now, Dave didn't merely remember those plays. He could actually describe them exactly as they had been described while they were happening by the Giants' longtime radio announcer, Marty Glickman, one of the great sports announcers. Now, Dave was a huge fan of Marty Glickman, and he could do an impression of Marty that was so perfect that if you closed your eyes and listened to David recall a play in Marty's voice, you would swear that Marty was in the room with you. Of all the familiar lines that Marty used in calling Giants games, and I don't know how many here ever listened to Marty Glickman, I think the one that he liked the most and the one that he imitated most often was the one describing those short gains by Coy or Fredrickson. Now, I can't even begin to do it as well as he could, but it went something like this. The handoff's to Coy, and he busts up left guard for a couple of 3 yards. David, if you're listening, I know that was pathetic. But when I think about Dave doing that call, and remember what he said to me about the importance of those modest gains, I can see a parallel that maybe David saw as well between the Giants making incremental progress in the face of the adversity they faced and the progress the underprivileged try to make against the social and economic challenges to which they're subjected. It would be great if they could score figurative touchdowns on every play and overcome their challenges quickly and easily. But the reality is that it takes an enormous amount of work, perseverance, and unfortunately money. And gaining even a couple of 3 yards matters, as it provides reason for optimism that in the end, the battle eventually can be won. Let's all continue to help this fund in David's name achieve its goals. Thanks again, everyone, for supporting it.
This concludes our program. Thank you again for attending. If you notice on your table, in addition to information about Annie Deschamps and the event program, there are appeal cards. And if you are so inclined or moved to make a donation or a pledge, we would certainly be grateful. And there are students positioned throughout the space who are happy to come by to the table and collect those pledges. And you can also put them in the baskets on your tables. Thank you all for coming. This has been an incredible evening. Thank you.